or maybe just full clothes, gloves, hat, baklava, like some kind of goggles.
Did you say baklava?
Yeah, baklava. Yes.
That's the kind of prepping I do.
Yes, have
I've seen all
something.
my baklava and I'm good to go.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Little Boner Colton.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time, decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
Gene, early on in the podcast, Roger Roper told me we don't do voices. But I don't care, Roger. Tonight, I will take on the character of Count Big D. And for you mortal listeners, we'll be delving into the haunted underground of the world of the vampires. For our kind listener and benefactor, Michael F., he has asked us to transport the podcast into the dark depths of the 1987 vampire horror film, Near Dark. Join us if you dare.
I love that the point where Big D decided on the podcast to be like decadent Euro vampire was when we did like the American vampire movie. Clearly.
Right. I'm also trying to figure out like what vamps are like inspiring that voice.
Oh, it could be Bane. You only embrace the dark. I was born into it. So it's either one. But
it's like a South African vampire.
Yeah, it'll work.
Oh, Lord. Well, our poor commissioner wrote in and said, "Dear Shatters, I clearly remember sitting in my basement as a teenager watching this film over and over, first on HBO, then countless times on VHS until the tape wore out. Always a fan of the macabre, the story's dark aesthetic immediately spoke to me. In fact, it changed the course of my life. I'll get to that in a minute. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not one to spend hours brooding in a corner thinking about death like Gene and Ash. It's just that I appreciate creative exploration on the subject. This film expertly taps that theme. For me, the supporting cast absolutely steals the show. They portray an ironic lust for being undead that made my 17-year-old self want to join their gang. There's not all the seriousness and self-hating internal conflict found in so many of the later films of the genre, i.e. Twilight. Despite the homelessness, dust, and lack of showers, they made vampiring fun. One special scene in this movie is the first time that light really becomes its own character. I was absolutely fascinated by the beauty and power of this light. As a kid in high school, I didn't exactly understand what I was seeing or where it was driving me, but it spoke to me, and I wanted to make other people feel the same way. But as a 17-year-old kid living in the Midwest, I didn't know the first thing about pursuing a career in film, so I joined the Army instead. 5 years later, and no longer in service, but with a particular set of skills and no real passion to pursue them, I decided it was make or break time. I finagled my way into working on a film being made in the area called The Shawshank Redemption and never looked back. All these years later, I'm a partner in a production company and serve as a director of photography on a multitude of projects, big and small. I've traveled the world to produce work that has enjoyed theatrical runs, time on Netflix, and television networks everywhere. I've sold my still photography all over the world and have spent an entire career working to produce imagery that sparks the same emotion in other people that Near Dark sparked in me way back in the 80s. My career hasn't made me rich or famous, but it made me happy, and I wouldn't change a thing. Who knew that I would have an 80s flick to thank for getting me started? No film is perfect, and this one surely has its flaws, but for me, it's a half-white movie. I look forward to hearing your review on this and every film. In the world of podcasts, yours gets a 0 white. Thanks for everything, Mike.
I have to beg to differ. It makes it fun. There's nothing about these dudes' life that's fun. The Lost Boys, those dudes had fun. They'd ride their bikes on the beach. They'd go out and get the girls. They'd listen to sexy sax music. They had a cool cave hangout. They could fly. They would jump off the bridge. That was cool.
Hold up. You're telling me that being able to walk into like any shit kicker bar in Oklahoma or Kansas and wipe the fucking floor with everybody there, get a good meal for free, drink all you want, torch the place doesn't sound fun to you?
No, it sounded chaotic. It was like an unplanned vacation. Everybody was surprised. Flights were canceled. It was not enjoyable. It wasn't fun.
Wait, do you only like your fun to be orderly?
If I'm going to be eternal, yes. if there's death coming out at 6 a.m. over the horizon, yes, I would like to plan out my trip, Gene Lyons.
That's the only time that you don't need to have it planned out is if you literally have eternity to do all the things.
I'd kill so many people. It'd be fucking beautiful.
Yeah, so you can hear the voice thing is partially because of my voice, but also I thought it fit.
Why is everyone in this podcast getting sick?
Oh, I live with a child, and she is ill.
You live with children.
Baby germs.
Oh, my child has a temperature of 99 degrees, and she has vomited many times.
That's not a real temperature.
Oh, shut up.
Near Dark is a 1987. Dad, I'm sick. I got bit. Near Dark is a 1987 neo-Western horror film co-written and directed by Kathryn Bigelow in her solo directorial debut and starring Jenny Wright and Bill Paxton. The plot follows a young man in a small Oklahoma town who becomes involved with a family of nomadic American vampires. Despite performing poorly at the box office, critic reviews were generally positive, and over the years, the film has gained a cult following. So I vaguely remember seeing Near Dark as a kid and thinking that I didn't like this kind of vampire. It was very different from other vampires I had seen. I thought vampires were very glamorous and beautiful. I also didn't like this kind of setting, like just in the American like Dust Bowl. Everything looked too hot, too dusty, and little did I know that years later I'd grow up to be a goth in Arizona, which is basically the real life version of Near Dark.
Well, I don't know if I've ever seen this, to be honest. I know I've heard of it, but I don't think I actually ever saw it. But I love a vampire movie, as we all know. I love looking at the differences in the lore and looking at like what makes it like that movie's vamp. So I'm always happy to add one to my repertoire. And this one was different, but yet strangely the same as all the others.
So vampire flicks, they're famously not my thing. Every time we review a vampire film, I just seem to have more questions about what vampires can do, what are the rules. Now, zombies, which I do like, it's pretty clear cut how you kill the undead. Shoot them in the head. Here, vampires, the weaknesses, the strengths, it varies wildly among the films. And I just remember this movie, the box cover, and you see Bill Paxton. And to me, it looked like a Road Warrior or The Hills Have Eyes vibe. So before Mike ever commissioned this, I'd never seen it. And I can no longer say that.
I would say that zombies have as much lore and differentials as vampires do. You've got the Romero zombies versus the rage zombies of the Danny Boyle era. And then like the cordyceps fungus zombies of The Last of Us. And zombies, there's a lot of different zombies.
Yeah, but there's no zombies who fly. There's no zombies with like telekinesis or zombies who have mind control. There's like, yeah, some are fast, some are slow. Ash, you're right. That's just a wild spectrum.
The way you kill them also changes.
You shoot them in the head.
Not all of them.
Unless they're bloaters. Spoiler alert.
Wait, is that a... Oh, no.
Yeah, it's The Last of Us. It's the big ones. You can't shoot them in the head.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
They're armored up. You saw last week's episode, didn't you?
No, I'm only on episode 2.
Whoops.
Anyway.
Well, he's in the trailer. It's in the trailer, right. So it's not
well, before this episode becomes a bloater, let's hit the trailer.
Separate your head from your shoulders.
Do it fast.
All right.
Good times roll.
might as well just kill me then, too.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world.
We'll give him a week, see if we can call him one of us.
He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
I want to kill. He makes you kill tonight.
And they all belong to the night.
It's $3 short for a bus ticket home. You help me out? What do you want? Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing.
Amen.
Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of how.
You nervous?
I would be too if I were you. Near dark.
The bigger boys fall in with the trouble. Check out time.
Bought yourself some time, son.
God damn, it's my family. Let him go.
Near dark. Pray for daylight. The night has its price.
Caleb Colton meets an attractive young drifter named May, who bites him on the neck and runs off. As the rising sun causes Caleb's flesh to burn, May arrives with a group of roaming vampires in an RV and takes him away. The most psychotic of the vampires, Severin, played by Bill Paxton, wants to kill Caleb, but May reveals that she has already turned him. Their leader, Jesse Hooker, reluctantly agrees to allow Caleb a week to see if he can learn to hunt and gain the group's trust. Caleb is unwilling to kill to feed, which alienates him from the others.
So often we get the vampire that's like been living so long that they're insanely rich. They own absolutely everything in the world. And it's basically an example like in the new Interview with the Vampire, Louis de Pointe has all this money. He's living in this fancy tower in Dubai. So that I expect. I expect like if you're living over time, you learn how to invest and you accumulate resources.
True.
What I like about this, though, is that we don't have the fancy I'm rich and cultured vampire. Instead, we get these vampires who are like barely making do, and they're living in this RV and they're dirty and they're traveling the country like Mad Max style. And it's definitely a very different look at a different type of vampires that have been alive for so long. And instead of us going like richer or going to high school and collecting all these degrees a la Twilight, we get something really new. And so from the start, I had really high hopes because I was going, okay, this is interesting. This is something different. This could be cool.
No, I think you're setting the bar far too low. To be a successful vampire or immortal, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take a special ability. These vampires are the worst. They don't plan anything out. Like, my thought is this. You remember Highlander? He had the right approach. He was immortal, so he put his money aside. He would then be able to use that money to change his identity, to buy birth certificates. These guys are out there. They're running amok. And they just don't know what they're doing. They're struggling to find a place. If you're alive for 300 years, you should have this down pat. You should know what you're doing. Put some money aside. You kill a victim. Guess what, buddy? Take the wallet. Take the car. Take the assets.
I mean, they take the car, clearly, but Big D, I think you're discounting the fact that this was the 80s. It wasn't like you could do internet banking and shit. Everything you had to do that was responsible was in the daytime. So they'd have to go to a bank in the daytime or go to like, you know, any sort of a government office in the daytime. 9 to 5 80s life was very tough for vampires.
No, but pirates handled it. These guys could be burying
pirates.
Yes, you could bury loot in the desert. Trust me, you could find your way around it, but they don't even think to take wallets.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could hoard gold. I mean, that's something that I figure that they would do. That's what clearly they do in the Interview with the Vampires. I think the bigger egregious thing here is that they don't learn anything. They've been living for 300 years. Not only are they not rich, they're also apparently not reading books either, right? Like they're not super smart vampires. These are like redneck RV vampires. So it makes sense to me. This is like the blue collar vampire that doesn't know how to invest. They get all their money in and they spend it.
Okay, so these are not the Dave Ramsey vampires, okay? They're not...
Yeah, Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is exactly what I was going
Whatever.
for
They
here.
don't have the snowball method where they're going to pay off their debts.
They have all their
by
cash
little.
in envelopes. So
Yes,
once the
they do.
envelopes are gone, they're like, look, guys, we can't vamp anymore this month.
No killing people,
Gotta
no
reel it
hotel
in.
rooms. We're out of money. But I would expect them to be good at one thing, right? How about staying alive and finding victims and killing them? But this group, they are the worst. They haven't learned anything. Every day the sun comes up and they are shocked by it. Oh, the sun's up. How'd that happen? Maybe you shouldn't break up the group and go into town miles away from the pack without a car to get ice cream. That's a bad idea. Try to prepare for the sun, maybe. Maybe, Gene, you're a gun guy, a prepper. Maybe have a bug out bag. In your bug out bag, you have like some kind of a shade, an umbrella, something you climb into, like the guys who fight forest fires. They can climb into like this little silver enclosure, or maybe just full clothes, gloves, hat, baklava, like some kind of goggles.
Did you say baklava?
Yeah, baklava. Yes.
That's the kind of prepping I do.
Yes, have
I've seen all
something.
my baklava and I'm good to go.
Okay, be prepared. Or even, there's one thing I'm going to ask. Is this a stretch, right? Every morning the sun comes up. Would you expect to have a watch? Because when May is like, Caleb, what time is it? When's the sun coming up? You should know that, May. You should know that.
Okay, May is established in this movie as being a bit of a dreamer. She's a bit out there, right? She's Professor Trelawney. Like, she's just, looking at the stars and shit. So I don't expect her to be prepared for anything. But Big D, let's get back to me being a prepper. Like, I drive electric vehicles. Like, that's how prepper I am.
He's got all that potassium iodine in his house with his like kegs of water.
Yeah. I think the thrill of it is embracing what they are, which is like killers that kind of live on the edge there. They're not cautious. They spend most of their time killing people in very public spaces, like just out in the middle of the fucking street in bars, like setting shit on fire. I think that's part of the fun for them. Would you want to watch a movie of just very responsible vampires investing their money?
That's called Interview with a Vampire.
They're not responsible at all. That's the problem. Like, they're not responsible at all. But I do think, okay, so to your point, I don't necessarily know if they need to have a device of some kind that pops out like a sun tent that they're always carrying on them. But I do think that at some point they would have encountered the sun and figured something out, like in the True Blood series, how Bill has to dig the hole in the ground when the sun comes out, surprisingly, and he has to bury himself all of a sudden. You'd think that they would have at least encountered it at least one or two times and have that emergency prep of, okay, this is my absolute last worst case scenario, something to do.
But I get the conflict you guys are talking about, right? Which is, it's one or the other. Either they're very risky, in which case they probably won't live very long, or if they've lived very long, they were smart about how they did it. In this case, we've learned that they've been alive since at least the 19th century, like the early 19th century, and yet at the same time, they're still around in the 1980s, so they must be doing something right. And in that, Near Dark opened my eyes to how far we've come with Easter eggs. Like, we are so spoiled now with Easter eggs. Because these days, you can go back to like episode 1 of The Last of Us, and you notice the student in the classroom scene with like the twitching hand and her bracelets like shining the light, and you go, oh shit, like she was already showing like symptoms, or different characters coughing, or Joel like not getting his pancake mix, and therefore maybe that's why he's not infected. Spoiler alert. In 1987, we've got like the basics. You got characters saying things like, hey, Jesse, remember that fire we set in Chicago?
Yeah,
Or
that was
Jesse,
a great
like,
fire. That was a great
yeah, it was
fire.
a great fire in Chicago. I fought for the South and we lost. And I just ask that the writers maybe work just a little bit harder, make us dig just a little bit, do a little bit of research. Like, this reminds me of that barn on the Southwest side. Let me Google that in 1987. Or like, I still want revenge for Malvern Hill. Give me something to chew on. Don't just throw it in my face. And speaking of making things simple, Caleb could have really saved himself a lot of trouble in this movie. At one point, he's trying to get a bus home. Like, he's miles away from home. He's with this vampire gang. He's short on cash. He's like $3 short. And he's at the bus station, runs into a cop who thinks he's on drugs because he's sweating, he's drooling, he's not looking good. He's gripping his stomach. All I got to say is Caleb is one dumb motherfucker. Like, that's why he didn't make the movie cover. He's that dumb. All he had to say to this cop, who's like, hey, son, what's wrong with you? Say, some crazy lady bit me. I need to go to the hospital. That's what I would do, right? He doesn't know he's a vampire. He doesn't know what the fuck that is. At the hospital, they have this thing called doctors. And doctors will check your vitals and they'll discover something's funky with your blood. And you know what they'd probably do? An IV. And if he's blood starved, probably a transfusion. Presto, he's cured. The movie's over.
Yeah, but the problem is, you mentioned how they're simple, like Midwestern folk. They don't trust the government. They don't want to go in there and become a guinea pig and end up in some research facility. So you don't trust the government. The government's going to take you away and they're going to do some tests on you. But Gene, I'm glad that you and Ash are here. You're both the vampire experts that I need to guide me through this film. So that scene you're talking about where Caleb notices the cop's got the wounded hand and he's smelling. You can see there's this sense that he's being attracted to it, doesn't know what it is. A couple scenes later, it's one of the many scenes where we get with Caleb and May just at some random dark roadside where they're kissing or they're talking about how blind in the dark is. And he leans into her for support and he gives that same look. And for a moment, I know as fucked up as this is, and please don't think I'm the big, just dumb co-host, which I probably am. I said, oh my God, he's smelling menstrual blood. We're going to get some new lore added here. And I have to ask, there obviously was no menstrual blood, but I'm wondering, this could be a commodity for vampires to stay alive.
Okay, so we talked about how there's different kinds of vampires, and Anne Rice vampires, Lestat does at one point like consume some menstrual blood. So it's possible for an Anne Rice vampire, but I don't think he was doing it for like sustenance. I think it was more like a fetishistic thing.
Kink.
But the biology of menstrual blood would make it pretty gross to vampires because we call it blood, but it's really like menstrual fluid. And half of it's not even blood, as we know. And also it's dead cells. So I think for a vampire, this would be like spoiled food. I think it'd be fucking gross.
The majority of it is tissue.
Yeah. So zombies would love that shit.
I mean, some people there's different kind of peanut butter. You got creamy, you got chunky, you got
spoiled. I mean, I guess people eat like kimchi.
Could be.
Yeah, my menstrual blood is always fermented. I mean, that's no. I mean, in May, it's clearly not her menstrual blood, right? She's a fucking vampire, so she's not menstruating. I can tell you the one thing that would be the best part about being a vampire is you wouldn't have your period anymore.
Is that proven? Is that actually lore?
All bodily functions stop.
Oh, so okay. That's why she's cold. Okay. I'm writing that down.
Yeah, oh my God.
Okay,
it's also why you don't see them shitting at any point during the movie, Big D.
I just thought that happened off camera.
Jesse's group enters a bar, kills the occupants, and sets the bar on fire because they're not good at planning. Caleb endangers them by letting the only living occupant escape, but later redeems himself by helping them escape their motel room during a daylight police raid. A camaraderie commences with Caleb asking Jesse how old he is, and Jesse responding that he fought for the South in the Civil War.
Obviously, one of the big things that's going to happen in any vampire movie, any vampire book, is it's going to be compared to what's come before it or anything that's more famous than it as far as vampires go. So we've got to make sure that we're orienting this film like we have with all the others we've looked at with like the greater vampire chronicles. And I use that term intentionally, vampire chronicles, because you can't help it for the Louis Dupuis de Lac connections that are all over this movie. You have a vampire in our main character here who doesn't want to kill humans. You have a vampire in him that doesn't want to live off the blood of humans. And he's really whiny. And so who does that feel like? It feels like Louis. And I'm sorry, but overall, Louis is just a much better character than this one. And so I couldn't help but feel at this point in the movie that even though it felt original at its start, and I had really high hopes when we really start to dig in and get to know some of these plot lines here, it just feels very derivative.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I didn't make the connection, but you're absolutely correct. And in Interview with the Vampire and in the Vampire Chronicles, right, Louis' breakpoint is he resists killing horrible people. He resists killing the rich. He resists killing thieves. He breaks when he goes out and he kills Claudia, right? Or feeds from her. And in this one, they kind of reverse that because Caleb, the poor guy, like his curse isn't vampirism. It's that every single potential victim he has is like a nice person. Like everybody else in this gang, they got fucking bikers and highway robbers that want to rape him. Caleb, he gets an innocent kid playing pool and then the nicest trucker in the world who happens to be black. Like, talk about added conflict. The whole time this trucker is like picked him up. He's making bad dad jokes. He's like teaching Caleb how to drive a big rig. And I'm just saying to the TV screen, like, please don't kill him. Like, please don't kill this guy. This guy's fucking badass. Please don't hurt him. And I understand why this is a struggle for Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, he's giving him career advice. Hey, you want to become I could help you. I could co-sign for you. Are you okay there, kid? Are you sick? Are you on drugs? I could help you with that too. I run a youth ministry. He was super helpful. Super helpful. But Gene, I got to go back to the vampires here, right? So you always have the hunger. We're led to believe that the hunger is overpowering. In other films, you really feel that need to like, oh, I have to feed. Your body's kind of rejecting it. And then the moral objection kicks in. But Caleb, he seems to survive for at least 3 or 4 days on a little bit of May's blood. There's no true hunger. They haven't said to him, hey, if you don't feed, you'll die. What's the motivation for him when he could sustain? It seems like he could just abstain from blood.
What more do you want from this guy? He's like stumbling around, retching, drooling.
Yeah, but he does that as a human. He does that as a human.
No, he does not.
He does. He stumbles around the whole movie, taking his hat on and off. This guy isn't the most stable.
Well, to your point, I mean, there definitely isn't the consequences that there are in other vampire movies where they start to waste away or they start to not be able to move, or like in True Blood where they start to all of a sudden bleed out of their eyes and ears and they eventually will just spontaneously combust. I mean, for sure, the stakes are not as high in this one, but he's hungry. He's hungry.
He can barely walk, guys.
It's like a mild hunger. He's like, oh, the pain. My tummy ache. Oh, I need to feed my tummy ache. I'll go 2 more days with a couple drips out of May. I want to see him writhing in pain.
But why didn't he go and Rice? I could figure the only thing is that they didn't want it to be a total ripoff, because he could have been, chewing on dogs and cats and goldfish.
Horses.
That horse will last you like a good week, easy.
Right.
When Mike commissioned this movie, he mentioned, the light scene. He also mentioned the bar scene. That was one of his favorite scenes. And I didn't remember the bar scene until we rewatched it. It is pretty good. And in this bar scene, the vampire gang, they come in, they try to start shit. There's a bit of tension there, but it's still kind of comical. And we get to see Bill Paxton like really shine as Severin. And he's a good vampire teacher. May is not a good teacher for Caleb. I think if he had just been left in Severin's hands, he would have been a killer by now, because he sets up the scenario where this dude literally beats on Caleb and then the bartender fucking shoots Caleb with a shotgun, giving Caleb like good reasons to kill. Like, even if he didn't want to kill when he walked into that bar, he should want to kill now. But I found the reactions from everyone in the bar really strange when Diamondback, she slits a server's throat and fills a beer mug with blood. And everyone in the bar, like the bartender, all the patrons are like, oh, well, nobody really liked Tracy anyway. They're not reacting at all.
And I mean, they could have chalked this up to fear. That somebody saw it happen and they go, oh my God, I'm just going to pretend I didn't notice that. I'm going to slip out the back. But that's not what this group does. I wanted more where we see like Dusk Till Dawn, right? If you have the locals and then you have the outside group that comes in, or traditionally in these bars, there's the local group. Then you get this outside unknown. I wanted to see the locals band together and try to get a last stand like Dusk Till Dawn. They wouldn't have done anything. They all would have been jumping out the window eventually. But instead, Gene, you're right. They just pretend like, I'm going to keep shooting pool. After you shoot the first guy and he doesn't go down, I think it's time just to be like, everybody run. Stop pretending. Don't go to the jukebox and pick a song. They know that you know they're vampires.
I feel like you want this to be a television show. Like, all of your wants turn these things into episodes so that they're able to explain all the different pieces to you.
I feel like I should take some of that back, because if I was in a bar and vampires came in, slit some lady's throat, and like killed a guy, I would probably just put a song on the jukebox and act like nothing was going on. Like, maybe just Act casual. I'm a vampire too, guys.
Check please, check please. As you're like lathering yourself in the blood, and just pretend like you're a victim on the floor.
Take me with you. So we've done a lot of things on this podcast that I love, but one of my favorites are these people that I used to think I knew their career, but in doing all these movies, I learned so much more about them. And for me, number one on that list is someone like Bill Paxton. I now, because of Shat the movies, love Bill Paxton more than I ever thought was possible. And I know you guys love our Arnold Schwarzenegger episodes, but for me, I get so excited time and time again when he's in something that we are going to cover. And here, Bill Paxton is amazing. Now, if you had asked me ahead of time, hey, what do you think Bill Paxton in a vampire movie would be like? I would go, not a good fit. But I would have been wrong, because I have to tell you, he's absolutely one of the best parts. This unhinged, weird vampire character that he creates is so much fun. And there's a lot of this movie that, for me at least, by about the hour mark, felt like it was drawing on like pretty long and wasn't necessarily going anywhere interesting. But every time he would then step on scene, it was so bonkers, and he looked so fantastic in this role. He looked great covered in all the blood. I was absolutely brought back in, and he saved a lot of this film for me.
I love that he's constantly a fucking mess, but has multiple outfit changes, and each of them is like cooler than the last. But I couldn't get over how incompatible Bill Paxton's teeth were with being a vampire.
That is fair.
That gap just seems like it'd be a real pain in the ass. You'd be picking people's neck skin out of your teeth all day.
But I mean, if you think of Paxton, most of his roles, he plays the wisecracking asshole. He's the brother Chet in Weird Science. He in Aliens, he's the shit-talking colonial marine. So he's perfect for this. But Gene, we cannot go outside of this bar and advance until we talk about another deficiency in this group. I will tolerate the fact that they're financially irresponsible, that they don't plan for the sun, which will kill them every morning. But the one thing the vampires should cherish is human blood, is the kill. It is their lifeblood. Like you said, they need it, the thirst. They kill Tracy. They don't even fill up a 12-ounce mug. They use just a little, and they're playing. It's wasteful, and it's short-sighted, okay? And these guys don't plan ahead. But I would expect them to have some kind of system to collect the most blood possible. If you kill one victim and drain them until the blood spoils, that doesn't require an addition. You don't have to kill a whole bar, Gene. You kill one homeless guy, you drain them, you all drink it. That way there's less attention. The police don't come looking for you. They kill some people and don't even drink their blood. Why are they so wasteful?
What is with you in wanting responsible vampires? That's no fun. When I was in Costa Rica, I watched these capuchin monkeys. And they go around and they pick like a perfectly ripe plantain. I'm like, oh, that monkey's going to enjoy the fuck of that plantain. They'll take one bite and they fucking throw the rest of a perfectly good fruit onto the forest floor. Why? Because they're fucking monkeys. And there's millions of plantains in the rainforest. There are billions of humans in the world. And as far as we can tell, no other vampires around. Why not waste blood? It's fucking fun.
I don't think we know that there's no other vampires. I don't think that that's part of this.
I don't think there are any in rural Oklahoma. They're all off moping in fucking Seattle and Transylvania.
Yeah, but Gene, there's no fucking police plantains packing heat that are going to come out of the jungle and defend the other plantains. The plantains can't defend themselves. The humans can, as long as they're aware the monkeys are doing this.
Baha! But the only mistake that they made was letting that dude fucking escape alive. So they don't need to drink all of their blood. They just need to kill everybody so there's no witnesses. Yeah. You don't know. Maybe all they need is a cup of blood to live on for like a week.
Well, I think the most egregious example of what he's talking about is this bartender here, because you know, we were going through this scene, and I have to be honest with you, it was a little bit of a letdown for me because everybody mentions the bar scene. And I guess for me, the one thing this movie is it is not scary. And I want at least a little bit of fear of the vampires that I'm dealing with. They should be like tragically beautiful and frightening in this really beautiful way. And these guys just aren't. But that being said, you've got the most violent piece of the whole movie, and we get Bill Paxton, who I do love, and I think he's hilarious when he does this, but he's got his little like razor boot, and he cuts the bartender's neck the 3 or 4 times, which the sound effect on that was also really, really strange. It was almost like a ping when he would slice the guy's neck open. And maybe it's just that they can drink dead blood, unlike other vampire movies. Like, it doesn't matter if they bleed out and they can lap it off the floor if they want to. But I have to agree with Big D here. I mean, at least bathe in it, paint themselves with it, like do something with the blood. I wanted some frenzy whenever somebody bled, and that just didn't. It just didn't happen.
Meanwhile, Caleb's father has been searching for Jesse's group. A child vampire in the group, Homer, meets Caleb's sister Sarah and wants to turn her into his companion, but Caleb objects. Caleb's father arrives and holds him at gunpoint, demanding that Sarah be released. He shoots Jesse, who regurgitates the bullet before wrestling the gun away. In the confusion, Sarah opens the door, letting in the sunlight and forcing the vampires back. Burning, Caleb escapes with his family.
So I could have done some research and found some like cool quotes from all of the vampire movies we've done, because vampires, they always speak cryptically. They don't give you straight information. They have to seem like they're, oh, the night is so bright, it will blind you. How about you give Caleb some plain rules? Okay, he's not a smart dude. You want him to join the group. Maybe he'll be a successful partner. You can get him out there. How about just say, hey, you're a vampire. You need blood to survive every X amount of days. Okay, sunlight, it's going to make you catch fire. You'll explode eventually. They're setting Caleb to fail as a new vampire. You give him a week. A week to do what? You can't train him for the job. You didn't give him some kind of like guidebook, some kind of instruction manual to become a potential member. You know, and then it gets even worse. So now dad and daughter, they're traveling the roads. It's scary. It's dark. This is not a place for an 8-year-old girl. Poor Sarah's out there. Dad saves him. I'm sick, Daddy. How about you tell him, Dad, I'm a vampire. They live in a world where vampires are known. And that would explain when Jesse gets shot by Dad and he says, that won't do anything. Dad, they're the undead. Run. Give vital information. And far too many times in movies we do, characters don't say shit you should know. I'm a vampire, Dad. Conversation's over. He doesn't think you have AIDS or you're addicted to some kind of drug when you say I'm sick. I can't go to the hospital, Daddy. I'm a vampire, you know.
I'm pretty sure the number one way to get your dad to think you're on drugs is to say, Dad, I'm a vampire.
Agreed.
Your skin was just on fire in front of your dad.
Yeah, and he showed him that.
Yeah, but Daddy needed to hear, I'm a vampire. You saw me on fire, Daddy.
He needed to be labeled. I'll say, okay, let's be fair here. Better vampire movies, part of the problem is they don't actually know the rules themselves. Like, think about Lestat, an interview with the vampire. He has absolutely no idea why or how he was made. And if you read the books, if you watch the good adaptations, one of the most tragic things about Lestat is that he has no idea how he came to pass and really knows nothing about him. And that's why it was such a terrifying transition. It's often used as this huge plot device to, I don't know, develop the characters in a way that this movie doesn't. So I do agree with you that here the lore makes no sense. And maybe it's just because they didn't know what they were sharing. And if they did know and didn't share, it's a really shitty thing to do to the new guy on the block.
Thank you. Yes.
They never come out and say vampire at any point in this movie. Big D said that vampires like a known thing. You never see any fangs. We don't even get the rules. We don't know the rules. Caleb figures out the sunlight thing the hard way. He's just like, I gotta walk home. Oh, fuck. I'm on fire. I'm smoking. And then in her defense, May tried to show him on the first night. She's like, hey, let me show you around. Let me show you what feeding is all about. He was like, fuck off. I'm going to go to the bus station. So, I mean, what do you want? He had a week to make a kill. He's just really shitty at being a vampire.
And what do you think they are if they're not vampires?
No, I'm not saying they're not vampires, but I'm just saying like the fact that vampires never uttered, maybe in their world, they don't know what the hell they are. They just think they have some weird eternal life disease that doesn't have a label.
A weird I don't die or age disease and need blood to survive.
Yeah, that holds a lot of water, Gene. They live in a world where Aliens is showing on the movie theater, but you don't think they have a concept of vampires.
I'm saying that they may not put it together. Like, it's a very odd thing to think.
Is
I'm
this
a
a
vampire.
slight against Caleb or the Midwest in general? What are you saying?
No, I'm saying if you got bitten by some lady and suddenly you had a bloodlust and whatever, would your first thought be like, oh shit, I'm a vampire?
If somebody kept saying, look how bright the night is. Oh, I haven't seen the sun. Possibly.
So she was trying to tell him.
Well, I think maybe, Gene, now we've learned that the vampire pandemic is a coastal problem. Maybe, they're so chic. They only hang out in like New York and the West Coast because that's where we see a lot of ours. I mean, to be honest, if you were a vampire, would you want to live indefinitely in the Midwest? There's no
competition.
Way. No way. But you don't want to live there.
But I think this speaks to the issue, though, right? Is like, imagine if this imagining of vampires. Imagine if vampires are essentially drug addicts, right? So they're not getting their shit together. They're not like thinking that far ahead. They're fiends, right? They're fiendishly searching for that next hit. And if you think of it in that way, right? Do like yes, occasionally a drug addict will show another drug addict how to properly use or how to properly score or whatever. But also there's incredibly risky behavior going on at the same time. And they're not all like the friendliest people or people that are that interested in helping you survive.
No, okay. I not to beat the point to death. I'll move on here, but I don't see any drug addicts being like, "Let me snort one bump. Yeah, throw the key on the floor. Woo! Yeah, I'm only gonna do a little bit of drugs. I'm gonna run around."
You should have been at the Hot and Ready's rally in Chicago in like 2014.
Oh, I missed that one. But I have one more question here about vampires, and then I'll kind of move on. I remember in Interview with a Vampire where we deal with a younger child that when
Claudia.
you turned, you freeze at that point. Mm-hmm. And she was tormented that she was an adult woman in a child's body. So now we get Homer. Homer is an adult trapped in a kid's body. And he mentions how this is an additional curse, that his life is worse because he's a kid and no one takes him serious. So then we get Sarah comes into the picture. We have to bring her in. He's infatuated with an 8-year-old girl, which doesn't make sense to me because I know it's convenient for the plot. You need the families to cross so Caleb can say, that's my family. No, you're my family. And we're going to get to the end of the movie. But I would expect that an adult would not be sexually attracted to an 8-year-old just because he's in a kid's body. Would you choose a child mate and wait for her to become an adult mentally? Or wouldn't you just go after an adult?
I think there's probably a lot of psychology going on here. Like one thing is he might be just intimidated by the adult female form. And so a child female form would be more appealing to him. But I was just generally confused by the crew taking Sarah hostage because if they're doing it to punish Caleb, like they could just fucking kill him. They don't need to do that. And if they want to turn Sarah into like a vampire made for Homer, why don't they've got possession of her for a while. Why don't they just do it then? Just do fucking something with this kid. Instead, the thing about Homer that bothered me so much is all they had this guy do was like dance around like a miniature Judd Nelson and shoot people in the back. He was a very pointless character.
Agreed.
Well, Caleb receives a blood transfusion that unexpectedly reverses his transformation. That night, May distracts Caleb while the others kidnap his sister. Caleb chases the gang on horseback, but his horse throws him. He commandeers a tractor trailer and runs Severin over. Caleb jackknifes the vehicle and jumps out as the truck explodes, killing Severin. Seeking revenge, Jesse and his girlfriend Diamondback pursue Caleb, but are forced to escape in their car as dawn breaks.
So now I think we can all agree the Colton family, they've been through a traumatic event. This has been life-altering. This is a terrible thing. They've saved Caleb. Yay, family's back together. The group knows where you live, Caleb. They know where the Colton clan is. That's where they grabbed you right out in front of your house as your family was running after you. It doesn't take a genius to think, maybe this group of lawless marauders who enjoy killing for fun, who now have a personal vendetta against you, are going to come after you. And I would expect a blue-collar rancher family like the Coltons to have the skills to say, yep, they're coming back. We're going to set something up here, some home defenses. Instead, they're sitting around the dinner table fucking bullshitting. The windows are open and like the curtains are like flapping in the wind. I'm like, okay, how long until a vampire comes flying in the window?
So they're clearly in denial, and I would have loved the movie actually better if a vampire did come and fly through the window at dinner. But I think Dad forgot that his hand was broken from being crushed by Jesse. He's just like, oh, give me some more mashed potatoes. And even if you did forget this whole ordeal and the fact that these vampires know where you live, May fucking stops by. If May is there, you got to figure, well, shit, someone drove her there. Bad guys in town. The first thing I would do is rush back into the house and tell my family, get your shit or fuck your shit. Let's just get in the truck and get out of here.
I need to oil the swing. Caleb knew somebody was on the swing, Caleb. You don't need WD-40. You need a shotgun. Go out there.
And I get that perhaps, he's still in love with May and he thinks it might be her and he wants to go talk to her. And May is undoubtedly gorgeous and irresistible. The first time we see her, I saw her on that street eating that ice cream. I'm like, I'd fucking die to go talk to her. But she's kooky. She's talking about the brightness of the night. She's being a little dramatic about being a vampire in general. When she was talking about like not seeing the sun or whatever, I was expecting her to say it was like 40 years since she'd experienced a morning. She's like, nah, 4 years ago. We've been doing this podcast longer than May has been a vampire.
Yeah.
And then Caleb's like, do you remember what the sun was like? Dude, you saw the sun like that week. Like, we were there for that. And it wasn't great. It wasn't a good time.
It was like 12 hours before June. He's running out of he can't even hold the blanket on his head. He got a good look at the sun earlier that morning.
Well, attempting to save Sarah, May breaks out of the back of the car with her. Burning in the sunlight, she carries Sarah into Caleb's arms, taking refuge under his jacket. Homer attempts to follow, but dies. Jesse and Diamondback also begin to burn. They attempt to run Caleb and Sarah over, but they die as the car blows up. May awakens later, her burns now healed. She too has been given a transfusion and is cured. We've spoken before on this podcast about movies getting ahead of their skis when it comes to special effects, particularly in the 80s, right? We had Lost Starfighter. In the 90s, we had Blade with that awful, awful end scene with the CGI. Near Dark, to its credit, plays it smart. It sticks to the basics. Vampire bite, you just need a little blood. We don't need fang effects. We don't need retracting fangs. We don't need anything like that. Burning in the sun, just get a little smoke, smear some soot on your face. You're good. The only time Near Dark went balls out was when Homer was burning in the sun and then exploded. And it's like you could see where the film was edited and like cut and then boom. Mm-hmm. That part was terrible.
It was like a sack of chopped meat. And then they just put an explosive in it. It just blew up. But
it's like a werewolf turning into a pillow.
No, I was about to say, at least it wasn't a pillowcase. But yes. I do have to say, whenever they would catch fire or smoke or whatever, it looked like shoe polish. It didn't even look like soot. Like their faces were so black.
I did start thinking, though, like, is this where Buffy the Vampire Slayer got the, inspiration for Spike always running around with the jacket, just smoking around campus?
Smoking, yeah. Or even just his car, right? That car, the Charger that he drives. I thought the same thing.
I also felt like they should have shown us a healing scene. We never see them regenerate. We never see them actually start the healing. And a lot of other movies they do, whether it's you hold up your hand and the wound disappears. Give us something like that.
Yeah, but they knew it would look like shit, so they didn't. I think it's smart.
Okay. Yeah.
I did think it was very bold of them, though, like when they're like, to see if they were healed, like, let's just open the barn door and see if you're okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have like 45 seconds. You could just scream and ride, set on fire, and then you close the barn door, be like, sorry about that, Gene. I didn't mean to. Yeah, you need more blood. We need a little more transfusion. But we've talked about Paxton. We've talked about some of the ties between this and other movies by one man, James Cameron. This film, watching this, it was like 6 degrees of James Cameron. I'm picking out actors. I'm picking out films and relationships. So I did a little bit of research because, Mike, I love you. I love the listeners, and it's what I got to do for the podcast. So this movie would not have been made without James Cameron. James Cameron's wife at the time, Kathryn Bigelow, the director. Cameron even served as a producer on this film in order to get it financially backed because her previous movie had been a bomb. Without him, it doesn't get made. We see the aliens prominently on the movie marquee in the hometown. Then you get the actors. I'm like, okay, we got Paxton in both. Okay, we got Jeanette Goldstein in both. Okay, we got, that is the cigar guy. The guy who gets killed in the bar, who gets knocked, hit up onto the pool table. That's the one who Schwarzenegger puts the cigar out. There's tons and tons of actors. The mom, Janet Goldstein, Terminator 2. And it was just so funny to see. This movie seemed like a family product where they were like, okay, I'm struggling with my career. James, help me out. Get your buddies, get your cameras, get some money. Let's go film it. And it worked out for her.
Yeah, we really haven't addressed the Bigelow thing in depth. And when I saw her as the director, I was like, that Kathryn Bigelow, like Hurt Locker lady? And doing this podcast has exposed me to a lot of aha moments. One of those is seeing why a director is special. And I think we've seen it time and time again where we see like an early product from a director and you just know there's something special about it, right? Something that sets it apart. And normally that thing is the director. And you could tell that Kathryn Bigelow just had a special quality that would lead to Point Break and Strange Days and The Hurt Locker. And of course, how could we forget Jamie Lee Curtis in Blue Steel?
You honestly think, Gene, without your husband being James Cameron, you think her career would have continued?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if you look back, like there is a quality to her that clearly he saw and clearly listen, we've seen 80s vampire movies. We've seen, quite a few of them. And I think that this one, it has a certain quality that just, you could see the talent in the direction there. That opening scene where they're just going across the Oklahoma landscape, it's quite beautiful.
Or just the way she shoots him on horseback, like after he's cured. Like there are these moments where she's allowed to be artistic. And I bet you any money, a lot of the scenes that I think are like just garish in this are the ones that, James Cameron was over her shoulder going, okay, we got to cut it this way because, Avatar's not great. And she wouldn't just do The Hurt Locker. Zero Dark 30. This is Zero Dark 30, Kathryn Bigelow. Like she really is fantastic. And you can see little pieces of it. And you can also see, I think, really a deep connection between this and what's going to come in Strange Days, which you already mentioned. The way that movie gets like really insane in parts in a fun way, she does here. And you can see her starting to experiment with that. And I think she's fantastic.
There's also decisions that she made with this storytelling that initially I didn't like, but upon like thinking about it for a few hours and days, I came to appreciate. One of those was like the blood transfusion thing. So I'm watching this movie and I'm like, you're just going to give them just fresh blood and that's it. Like, are all the characters involved the same blood type? And like, don't vampires get fresh blood from humans all the time? It's literally what they feed on. But if you assume vampirism is a disease, I started thinking about it. Like, well, yeah, flushing out vampire blood. Let's assume that the body is consuming that blood, right? And you need more of it. And then introducing fresh blood into the bloodstream, it seems like a reasonable solution. And I'm talking compared to other vampirism cures that we've seen in like kill the head vampire, then everyone will be fine. Like, why? And the only thing that surprised me was that Caleb thought of it and not his dad. Like the actual fucking doctor in this situation might have been like, hey, maybe if we give you some different blood, that might help.
I'm going to agree to disagree here because I was about screaming at my TV in this part of the movie. I hated that there was a way that they could get out of their vampness because vampirism is a curse as much as it is a gift. And you would think they would be like in the other ones where the disease actually makes them die. And so therefore the disease that they have basically reanimates them. And that's why they have immortality. What they're doing here is like a Last of Us infection more than a vampire thing where they're actually still alive and something's taking over their human body. And I was like, okay, so like you stick a needle in, we take your blood out, we mix in more human blood, and all of a sudden you're not a vampire. Like I thought it was pretty lame.
But basically that's saying that you're upset that this movie treats vampirism differently from other movies. Like, what do you want, just the same movie over and over again?
Absolutely not. I love other takes on vampirism. Daybreakers, I think, is a great example of something different. Let the Right One In is a fantastic example of something different, which, my God, somebody commissioned that. It's like way past our cutoff, but let's do it anyway. For me, it was just like, I don't know. I guess my low bar is somebody's actually still a fucking vampire at the end of the movie, because that's my issue here. I had no idea that they were going to come back around and like, we're like human again, Blade style. Because if they need these blood transfusions over and over and over again, like Blade does, that makes more sense to me. But instead, it's like, nope. We actually just get one little treatment and we're not vamps anymore.
There was that scene where like Caleb's like walking around like in the field with Sarah on her shoulders, like, I'm all cured now. And I totally expected something to go horribly wrong.
Or just burst into flames.
It just explodes.
Right. Well, because what this does to this movie is this is not a vampire or horror movie. It's an action movie that has blood, like, consumed. It's like a cannibal movie.
Now's the time in the podcast we give our Shat score for Near Dark. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie take to your respective butts. 0 wipes is getting a blood transfusion that brings you back from eternal damnation, apparently, and cures your bloodlust. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It is giving up immortality and superhuman powers to live in Oklahoma. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Near Dark?
So I think for me, I have to think about this movie not as a vampire film because I don't really know if it is. And if it is a vampire film, it's much worse for me than if it isn't. If it's just like a movie, because it doesn't add much to this kind of a genre. Some of the ideas are okay. It moves fairly quick through some of it. It feels long in others. And here's the thing, guys. For me, this is 3.5 wipes if Bill Paxton is not in it. It was whatever. Bill Paxton, though, and his performance takes a whole wipe off for me. I think he's so good. And I am glad I watched it just for the simple fact of not missing this performance. So with Bill Paxton taking the wipe off, it's 2.5 wipes for me.
I'm going to come in a little bit lower than you, Ash, at 2 wipes. Some parts of this movie definitely belong in USA's Up All Night. Like that shootout in the motel, it was just horribly shot, really cheesy, just didn't care for it. But this dusty, grimy, reckless life that turned me off as a kid really appeals to me as an adult. I liked seeing this version of vampires. I like seeing any version of vampires, but I like this twist. The supporting cast, I agree with Mike, minus Homer, kept me entertained. And that bar scene, I thought was tons of fun. This movie is better than Lost Boys, but falls short of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I'm coming in at 2 wipes for this one.
Man, I'm really stuck here. I might need like a quick intervention. Just to be fair,
Right.
so I hated Bram Stoker's Dracula. I gave it a 4. I was going to give this thing better, but I don't think that's fair because at least that's a beautiful film. This, I don't know if I can in good conscience give it a 3, which I was going to. And you guys just gloss over the fact of that whole scene where Bill Paxton is like punching through the hood of the semi and pulling
Great.
out.
I know, it was funny.
God, I got to go worse than 3 wipes. I was going to do 3 wipes, but in retrospect, I can't. I thought it was a pet project to get Kathryn's career kickstarted. Cameron obviously had a big part in it. The portrayal of the vampires was unoriginal. I don't think it added anything to the genre. I think it was muddy, the film itself. A lot of walking around truck stops and aimlessly through dark streets. I don't
Oklahoma.
care. So the eternal damnation of being a vampire is better than eternal damnation within Oklahoma. I'm giving this a 3.5 wipe.
All right, so harsh. So with 3.5 wipes from Big D, 2 wipes from me, and 2.5 wipes from Ash, that gives us an average wipe score of 2.666 wipes for Near Dark.
Okay, so Gene, that ties us with a bunch of other movies in our 193 spot. Pretty Woman, Top Gun, Rambo, Ghostbusters, Poltergeist, Roadhouse, My Cousin Vinny, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, L.A. Story, Crocodile Dundee, and 12 Monkeys. Slightly better than Kingpin and Robot Jocks, and slightly worse than Father of the Bride, Adventures in Babysitting, and The Fifth Element.
Father of the Bride strictly because of you think.
It's
Would you
pulling on my heart.
Would you give that one? Would you give that one, Big D?
Father of the Bride. I give it a 0.75 just because
you
I
gave
have
that
a heart.
0.75 and you gave this movie a 3.5?
Oh, Miss Bonks. Yes,
Right.
it's a beautiful
Such
story
an
of
awful
love.
movie.
Plus, she grew up next to my hometown. It's a great story.
Okay. I'm gonna anytime now someone's from New Orleans in a movie and be like, fucking 0.5 wipes. They're from home.
Listen, it's an emotional connection to me. It makes me happy. It's a warm, safe place. It's an old, beat up like sweater on a chilly day.
Yeah.
It does something emotional. I don't judge either of you.
Yes, you do.
I apologize, Ash. I can't keep living up to. I apologize. I'm sorry. Grease 2 is a fine film.
Oh my God.
All right, Mike, I hope you feel that was a fair score. I know by your commissioner letter that you don't. I hope you continue listening to the podcast. We love you so much. I appreciate you giving us this movie.
Me too.
I do too.
And before we get to next week's episode, I want to send a special thank you to everyone who's been sending us voicemail and email. We are receiving it. We are reading it, listening to it, and we will get to it as soon as we can. This week, we have time for one voicemail, and it comes from Jeff in Canada.
Hello, hosts. This is Jeff from Canada. There are many Jeffs who appear to write in or call in, so I think I may need to start a club of sorts. This Jeff recently commissioned A Few Good Men. And thanks for doing a super job. Hats off to Ash for acting out my scripted intro beautifully. Gene, during your recent Spinal Tap podcast, you pointed out how crazy it is that Rob Reiner directed both movies, and I couldn't agree more. A quick note to your listeners on A Few Good Men. It is based on an actual event, and what makes it even stranger is one of the Marines who took part in that actual Code Red was shot years later, and that murder has never been solved. That's pretty wild, true crime stuff. When it comes to Spinal Tap, I had to weigh in here. I was one of the first of my friends to get into this movie, and I've converted tons of people to be fans. Almost every line is a winner, but you missed my all-time favorite. When the tour is crumbling for the band and all the venues in Boston are canceled, the manager says, "Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it, though. It's not a big college town." That still makes me laugh. It is a hilarious throwaway line, beautifully done by that manager. As you pointed out, that actor did a great job. So really neat how you knit those two things together, Gene, A Few Good Men and Spinal Tap. Congratulations on two very entertaining podcasts, and I'll look to a future commission as it was great fun to participate. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for your voicemail. I hope you do get the Shat on Jeff Club or whatever, get together. We'd love to know who's in that club. And I didn't realize that Jeff was such a common name. I know we have a lot of Adams and Mikes, but Jeff is a new one to me.
I also think that Jeff, you should call in all the time. I love his voice. He's got such a great podcast voice.
And that just that touch of Canadian in there.
I know.
It's delicious.
Oh, it's fantastic. And I mean, I feel a documentary coming on about this unsolved mystery. I'm sure Big D and I both will watch it.
I probably would.
Big D, have you watched the Murdoch Murders documentary yet?
No.
Get on it. It's 3 episodes. It's great.
Is that like an A-Team thing?
No.
Murdoch, nice. No, different Murdoch, I assume.
Okay. Well, if you'd like to leave us a voicemail, just go to shatpod.com, use the SpeakPipe feature. We'd love to hear from you. And we promise, we will get to those someday, even if it's just an episode with all of your voicemails. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week, socially awkward Muriel wants nothing more than to get married. Unfortunately, due to her oppressive politician father, Muriel has never, ever been on a date. Ostracized by her more socially adept friends, Muriel runs into fellow outcast Rhonda, and the two move from their small Australian town to the big city of Sydney, where Muriel changes her name and begins the arduous task of redesigning her life to match her fantasies. Commissioned by Mary O, came out in 1994, and I have to be honest, this will be a first time for me.
I am so excited. Ever since this has been commissioned, I have been waiting.
Oh my
This
goodness.
is one of my favorite movies, like top 10 favorite movies. I love this movie.
I wish that people could have seen this. This is the definition of waiting with bated breath. As I was speaking, Ash was like almost hands up. I could see the emotion.
I'm so excited.
But I'm scared now. If I give this a bad score, Ash is she's gonna hold it against me.
Well, I mean, I just want to remind you, I'm going to just play the clip of "I Don't Judge You" and Gene. I'm just gonna play that again and again and again. But no, oh my God, we're gonna sing so much ABBA.
I'm in for that.
Big D loves love ABBA. Yeah.
I did. I was prepping my meals yesterday, listening to ABBA. Some SOS, some Dancing Queen.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it's
God,
good.
Waterloo. I actually watched this today, and it held up. Just I'm so
I can
glad.
even post on social media last year's visit to the ABBA Museum.
Yeah,
My whole family went. It was it was almost like, Mecca. It was the journey I was required as a Swede to take in my life. I have
You're
to go see Vasa, Gröna Lund, and the
you're
ABBA
gonna be like a
Museum.
modern day Muriel and her best friend. Although, spoiler alert, I hope I don't end up with cancer and you with a failed marriage. This is gonna be fine. It's gonna be
Thanks.
fine.
On
I mean,
that
I would be
note-
the one with cancer here.
How about neither? I'll take neither.
I mean, Rachel.
I'll become a
Griffiths is pretty
vampire in
great,
Oklahoma. I'll take that over that.
though. I don't want to be a vampire in Oklahoma. I'd rather have cancer in Australia.
That's the cold open right there.
Well, thank you, Mary, for your commission. Thank you, Mike, for your commission. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, where everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Once upon a time, there was a girl named...
Muriel.
Muriel.
Are you Muriel Heslop? No.
All she ever dreamed about was getting married.
Looks like I'm next.
There was only one thing missing. A groom.
No one's ever gonna marry you. You've never even had a boyfriend.
Muriel's on the dole.
You never wear the right clothes.
You mental case! You keep away from us!
But before she can find a future,
I'm gonna be a success, Mum. I'm gonna get married and I'm gonna be a success.
she has to find herself.
You are wicked. Well, stick with me, because I'm wicked too.
Rhonda changed my life.
She would.
Oh, by the way, I'm not alone. I'm with Muriel.
Now, the girl she used to be has changed.
I've got one.
Well, it's a start.
We just want to know you're all right, love.
Into the woman she always was.
Muriel, are you all right?
You're terrible, Muriel. This is my new life. I'm a new person.